bet you're wondering why I'm standing here in the middle of a parking lot in downtown New Bedford. Well, in the early 1800s, most of these buildings weren't here, and this parking lot definitely wasn't here. This lot was actually larger, and in 1821, Andrew Robeson built a mansion here. It had an atrium attached to it and extensive gardens, and I've even read that all the little boys in the neighborhood would come and peek through the fence to see the goldfish that were in the pond. In 1978, the house was still here, but it was deteriorating and it was in danger of being demolished. So Whale came in and they moved the house down the street to where its present location is. And if you ask me and the rest of Whalen City Ghosts, if the ghosts of the Robesons followed their home that they treasured, I would have to say yes. In 1978, during the blizzard of 1978, they actually moved the house right down the street, so close that they actually scratched this building, the Custom House. Here we are at the present location of the Andrew Robeson house at 32 William Street in downtown New Bedford. When we entered this house to investigate it, we had no idea how much of the whaling history we were going to learn just from one investigation. So come on in and meet the ghosts of the Andrew Robeson house.
Is it still pegging?
Yeah, yeah. So
Are you sure it's still pegging? Because then it can't be the fridge either.
the fridge is unplugged?
Yep.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
it's something.
Yeah, it's something, but it ain't the fridge.
Welcome to this edition of Whalen City Ghosts Presents, and I'm here tonight with the co-host, Sue Swanbeck, who does our videography for the team.
So I'm not used to being here.
No, she's usually behind
I'm
the
behind
camera.
it.
But she also does the psychic research for the team. And I feel that's an important part of the paranormal investigation, because if Sue is getting impressions of things that I sometimes know about the history, or that we sometimes don't know about the history of a location, it can help us do a better investigation, because we can question the ghosts a little more accurately if we're getting some kind of impression from the psychic. And I like to log that in too and keep track of that, because there is a human element to ghostly paranormal happenings, because we're the ones who experience this stuff.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, you'll get
I'm
used to
pulling
it.
double duty. I'm
You'll get used
super
to it.
ghost
I'm an old
hunter.
pro now.
Okay, you go ahead, pro. But this was a really cool case.
Yeah,
I liked
we
it. I liked it
really,
a lot.
we were fortunate enough to be allowed to investigate the Andrew Robeson house. He actually was a very strong abolitionist in the area. He actually nominated a freed slave, his name was Abraham Borden,
yeah.
to be inducted into the New Bedford section of the Lyceum. And up until that point, I mean, this was a privileged white man's association. So for him to actually, you know, come forward and nominate a freed slave like that, I think that says a lot about him.
I think it does too.
I love this first EVP that we're going to play for you. It's actually very loud, and after this, I guess from now on, we have to set up our equipment much more quietly. But I'd say that maybe they were actually talking to Sue, because you're just so boisterous.
I just got this. It's the personality of me. I'm just like, okay, let's get this going.
Oh.
You know, and with all the extra equipment that, all the extra camera equipment.
It's too funny. She talks to herself when she's setting up her cameras, so that's probably what the ghosts were talking about. It's actually hilarious. I'm going to film her one of these days.
That'd be kind of interesting to see me. No, I don't like this camera. You're not supposed to do this.
It was early during the night. I had actually had my own personal experience, and I told you about it afterwards.
Yes.
Because we don't tell Sue anything.
No, nothing.
And we were doing all of our what's called baseline readings, and usually you're setting up cameras, but the rest of us will go around the house and we'll use some of our meters. So we had done most of the house, and we had done the whole east side of the second floor, and I went across to another room on the west side, and just as I was coming in the door, I heard this woman's voice that sounded like she was singing. It was beautiful, and you know, I couldn't quite understand what she was saying,
Right.
but I knew, and I know I smiled to myself at that time, because I was like, oh great, I know I'm going to recognize this voice if I record it tonight.
Right.
I'm going to know that voice.
That's good.
Yes, she
good.
does actually talk. And when you hear this, and the impression that I got from hearing it, head to the men's Andrew, which we're identifying Andrew Robeson, I think,
Right.
there. It's a coincidence that we're in Andrew Robeson's house and we directly have the name Andrew.
So moving it fast doesn't sometimes do this? You too?
Yes?
And you can rotate.
You too? You too? You too?
Now, this next one, again, really makes me feel that we are dealing with aware spirits, because we're setting up cameras. This is still very early in the night, before we actually started any of our official EVP sessions. We like the light, and most of our cameras, we do have some full spectrum and some normal, just daylight handheld cameras and stuff like that.
And the
most
infrared
of
and the black light.
cameras that we set up, like our DVR
Right.
system, those are infrared.
That's infrared,
so
yeah.
I'm wondering if they were seeing the infrared light there, and if it's possible that spirits can see in that spectrum better than, you know, living people can. Because the EVP, we like the light. Well, this next EVP left me kind of wondering, because it says play with it, and did they want to play with the light that they were just talking about a few minutes ago, or one of our other pieces
I think
of
they
equipment?
wanted to play with the static detector, because that thing, that new piece of equipment, it
Oh.
is so cool. Because it's like you generate it, and then the whole light goes around in a circle. So coming from a video perspective, you actually get to see it when they're playing with it, and it's just, my blonde is showing again.
Oh,
But
don't
it's
worry.
so
No,
cool.
I play with
love
the thing
that thing
all the time.
There is actually a video of the static detector showing off, and around that time, I think that's when the play with it EVP comes into play.
I've been doing audio for a long time, and there's recordings that I've done that make me wonder a lot of things. Is there something that happens when we're recording their voices that we only get part of it? Because a lot of
It's a
times, you know, we get
possibility.
just the first name of someone, or, you know, it sounds like there's much more, like it's a piece, a fragment of a sentence, and there should be more. This next one, it says dead people, and it sounds like two different voices to me, although
Right.
one is whispering, so it sometimes can be hard to decipher a voice when it's whispering like that. But then it says worry them. Is there, you know, something missing from that sentence in between there? Because you know, dead people don't worry me. You know, this is what we do.
No, dead people don't worry me either. I mean, they're with
So-
me all the time.
Do they worry you guys?
Yeah.
And this one I love, you know. It's a strange occurrence, I guess, but I have actually recorded ghosts asking for their mothers on a lot of occasions. And maybe, you know, when you're on the other side and you're a bit scared.
I don't think
As
if it
some of
matters
them
and you're
are.
on the side. I mean, look at me and my age. When something goes wrong, I want my mommy too. And I'm
True.
living.
True.
I want my mom.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
You know.
I do. Love you, Mom.
I really actually love this next EVP.
Me too.
And the funny thing about it is I'm a woman, I think, because I was born that way. But I asked Mr. Robeson if he knows that whaling is illegal today.
Right.
And he answers almost right away, I know, sir. So the new condition on the team, because I guess he recognizes that, you know, I'm the boss, is that everyone has to call me sir and salute.
Ah, yes, I'm picking on you. Sir, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, she was the first one who started calling me sir after
Sir.
that.
Well, you know, I get this stupid blonde, and I'm not actually even a real blonde, to tell you the truth. I'm not. I don't really care. You know, gray, white, and ginger. But, yay, take your pick.
No, you're a Weasley.
And simple brat, now you're a sir. Yes, sir.
That's okay. At least I wasn't the
Hey,
simple
my
brat.
son's in the Army, so yes, sir, sir.
We can't tell you what I've been on some occasions because they've called me
No,
some
some of them are
naughty
kind of
things a few
inappropriate for
times.
PG ratings.
Yes,
But
definitely.
yes, sir. Okay, what's next, sir?
Whaling is against the law now. This next EVP, it's not really as loud as most of the EVPs that we play, and that probably brings up a whole can of worm because we usually use what some people call Class A's
Right.
for the show because we want everybody to be able to understand them, but we also record other recordings that are of lesser quality that take a lot more deciphering.
Yeah, but those are the ones sometimes we can add to the site and tell people to use headphones as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. You know, we're always putting stuff up on Facebook or
Yeah.
on WheelingCityGhost.org, which I'm actually working on right now. So if you visit WheelingCityGhost.org, I'm trying to finish it. I promise I will soon.
She'll get there.
But this next one, the interesting thing about it is that I use that Zoom H2 that a lot of us on the team have been buying because they're great recorders for the
Awesome
paranormal.
recorders. I love it.
Yeah, definitely.
I do.
But I a lot of times will put the headphones in and put them on my head and actually be listening live to what we're recording at the time. And this particular EVP, Miranda, I did hear it in the headphones, but it was quite a bit louder than this actual recording was. So it makes me wonder still more about the mechanics of how EVP, electronic voice phenomena, actually
Right.
works, because there were other times where I was clearly hearing Anna Robeson's voice, that beautiful singing voice,
Right.
in
And
the
it doesn't show up.
headphones, and it was not on my recording.
Coming from somebody that does what I do, as far as walking around getting the emotions, I mean, this happens to me all the time. A lot of times it's audible, but it's within my own head. I know that
Yeah.
sounds like a blonde thing, but it is. It's audible in my head. And a lot of
Yeah,
times if they
we hear
don't,
voices in
if
our
they don't have
heads.
enough energy to talk, they're playing Pictionary with me. Good thing I played it with my
You know,
kids.
yeah.
So they're playing Pictionary with me. Like if they're trying to convey love with somebody, I get a red rose in my head.
Yeah.
You know, so it really depends on the situation.
Miranda. This next one is another EVP that actually occurs commonly all over the place.
Yep.
They seem to be camera shy. This one says, "We don't want the cameras," and it sounds like the same singing female voice of Anna Robeson, but she's a little higher toned. I think she's a little more upset, like, we don't want the cameras. And I hope when we go, you know, as we have more contact with the home and the spirits there, that we can convince them not to be afraid of our cameras and show up. That would
Normally
be
when we go
awesome.
in, we're going in with maybe 3 cameras or something, and then, you know me, I have this fetish for camera equipment, okay? Because normally I'm behind it. So
Oh,
then
we had
adding-
more than 3 cameras in that house. She's lying there.
I added my DVR system to this, so.
What do we have, 12 cameras?
Yeah, well,
on
we
that
got 12
DVR?
cameras going, so maybe these poor ghosts say, "Oh my God, which direction do I go in?" They don't know.
Well, they were surrounded by cameras. That's probably why they
Yes.
wanted to go hide in the men's room. Oh, this next one, I love it because not very often are we lucky enough to get a full name from a
that's
spirit.
true.
We
Very true.
might get a first name, a last name, things like that. And this one's really interesting. It is a woman who calls out the name Edward Swan. So you know me, I start
Could
going
be
and
short
doing.
for Swan Deck. Maybe it's a relative.
You never know. I thought that when I saw the name Swan,
Yes,
because
Swan.
but it is a woman saying the name Edward Swan,
Right.
and I start looking, and right away Edward Swan came up in the history, and we have a copy of the 1873 New Bedford Directory, and it lists Edward Swan as an ore maker, and he was right down on South Front Street. We don't always get a full name.
No, we don't.
Shortly after we recorded Edward Swan's name, we get this really great accent. I love it. And it seems to me that his whole family was English, and that probably explains his accent. But he tells us, I'm Billy Slater, and the way that he says it is, I'm Billy Slater. So that's just a funny kind of accent to me.
It is.
And when I started doing his research to look him up, he took a little bit longer because I'm looking for William. And what I did find was a John William Slater, who was born in New Bedford, 1895. And I also found another New Bedford directory, and it shows him, and this is really interesting, as the building superintendent of the New Bedford Institution for Savings, which was one of the banks that Andrew Robeson had founded. He was on
that makes
the board
sense.
of directors.
It's got to be all connected.
You know. Now, you know I love this next DVP.
I do too.
I usually always have a soft spot for the children EVPs that we hear, unless when they're pretending to be children. That's kind of besides the point. But this particular EVP, we were upstairs and we had just done an EVP session.
Yep.
And I do insist that we take breaks during the night so that whenever we're actually working on investigating, we're not
you're
worn
not
out,
overtaxing
you know.
yourself, checking cameras, checking batteries.
Definitely take a few
rearranging, get a better
minutes,
perspective.
relax. So we were in that upstairs room on the east side, and we were just about to take a break, and we were, you know, casually moving about the house at the time, and we hear a fire engine in the background. And since our recorders were still running, Mark Pacheco, the lead investigator for Wheeling City Ghosts, records this. He says it out loud, fire engine, and not that long after he says it, maybe a few seconds, it sounds to me like it's a little boy, and he says, fire! And he's even got that New England accent. It's not F-I-R-E, it's F-I-A-H, fire.
Fire.
And
He was
it's
very
just
excited.
great.
And I think little kids, fire, fire, let's go look and see what's happening.
You know, and it makes me wonder, because this spirit who says this is aware of the sound of the fire engine.
Right.
And can he see it? Can he actually look out the window and see a fire engine going by the house?
Or can they hear what's going on? Because you got to figure,
definitely.
they
I
do
think
answer
so.
our questions,
They
so they
do.
have to hear. So
think
just because
so.
they just hear us doesn't mean that they're not hearing what's going on around us as well.
Definitely. Now, you know I kind of find this one funny, because almost every time we go on investigation, we have ghosts that say my name or will identify themselves specifically to me.
Yep.
An example is when we were just recently in the Gallery X, and that was great EVP. We had
that was awesome
more than one thing
EVP.
happen.
I
Equipment
loved that
went
one.
off. There was the cold spot. And he specifically says, I'm David on the floor with Luann.
Right.
Now, this particular one is asking, who's Luann? And I'm like, how could they not know me? I thought every ghost in the world knew me already. And you know,
Who's
this happens
Luann?
all the
Well,
time.
maybe that's because they called you sir.
Oh, yeah. I thought, yeah, maybe he confused them calling me sir.
Yes, that's
Who's
what it was.
Luann? I thought she was
Yes.
a lady.
No,
oh,
no,
wait,
no.
she's
That's
a
not
sir.
Luann. That's because it was, you was sir.
The next EVP is another one of those cases, and this is more common, where we just get a single part of the name.
Yeah.
And it's a soft whisper. Eva is the name, and I didn't find anyone named Eva or any derivative of the name that was associated with the Andrew Robeson
Yeah, it's
house.
really hard, especially with nicknames.
Yeah, and
It could have been a
the
nickname.
strange thing about it is the original location of the Robeson house, and I don't know how many people out there have actually heard of it, but there was something called the Ark, and it was actually located in a few different locations around the wharf and downtown New Bedford, and what it was a house of ill repute. And,
So it wasn't
you
Noah's
know,
Ark.
No, far from Noah's Ark.
Wasn't
There-
Noah's Ark.
Although they might have had a few animals there,
Okay.
for all we know.
So exactly what was the Ark?
The Ark was where there were, of course, ladies of the night available, and
Oh.
a lot of drinking went on, and drugging, which a lot of people back then
So
did
kind of like
the,
Noah's Ark.
the morphine,
Oh.
you know, stuff like that. And this was a noisy place, and sometimes the ladies of the night were outside with little clothing on, and children could actually walk by and see all of this going on. And there were times during the history of downtown New Bedford when, you know, the upper crust who lived down there and owned boats and businesses
Right.
would get upset about the goings on at the Ark, and it was actually burned out a few times.
Wow.
And there was a time when it was very close to the Robeson house, just a couple of blocks over. So this just single female name makes me wonder, and maybe it's just an intuition, if she was one of the ladies of the night. Was earlier during the night when I think that the Robesons were still unsure about us.
Right.
And it's a woman, and you will hear her say no, a very long no,
Right.
in that particular clip.
Yeah, that was a cool clip.
Well, if it's up there, then yeah, it would be down.
The actual EVP in the video clip is towards the end of the clip, sort of,
Okay.
because you hear your voice, and it's right at the very end of your voice. As your voice is the loudest voice on
My
the
voice
team.
is the loudest
So
voice.
you could hear your voice clearly from downstairs.
Okay.
And it kind of comes in. You say, I think it's what was that?
Yeah,
And you
I
hear-
heard something. I was picking up, and again, it's hard to tell whether it's audibly out or if I'm hearing it in my head, but I hear it.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's really difficult to say where it comes from, and that's why the EVP backing up sometimes the
Well, it's
impressions that I get is
possible
good.
that you might have heard it, because it
Yeah.
is pretty loud, which means it's closer to the video camera upstairs on the
Right.
second floor, but bright lights. And again, they're somehow attracted to our lights.
What the heck is that? That.
The last little audio clip that we have in a video
Yep.
from that night is interesting again, because I really felt that they were more comfortable with us at this point. This was a little bit closer to the middle of the investigation, and they were answering us. They were saying things.
Yes, they were.
We got some direct answers to questions, some names, things like that. But I think they still were leery of us, that we were going to end the night with trying to make them leave their house, because this particular video clip says "will not go." And it's interesting too, because people don't really speak like that anymore. They'd say "we're not leaving," or not "will not go." It sounds more 18th.
Yeah, well, we get that a lot, though. We do.
Me.
We get that quite a bit when sometimes we're picking up some of the EVP. It's not lingo, a slang that we would use as of today. It's definitely something from another time.
Oh, well, I hope everyone enjoyed having you. I know I enjoyed having you. We
I'll
always talk too much.
When we get another co-host, I'll be more comfortable behind the camera.
Yeah, she would much rather be behind the camera. I
silly for
dragged
this.
her. She was kicking and screaming. And I hope that we get to see you again on Whaling City Ghosts Presents, where we'll bring you more ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope you really enjoyed learning about the whaling industry and the Andrew Robeson house as much as we did. And we'll see you next time, because you never know where Whaling City Ghosts
We'll end up next.